So, one key intercultural experience from week two that I had was in one of my lectures. I was speaking to my local buddy Runga, and he stated that he actually needed two scholarships to apply to being our student buddy as part of the gig program. And I found that really interesting and impactful to me because it made me realize just how much privilege we have in Australia to be able to participate or be guaranteed to be able to participate in programs like these. He also talked a little bit about how primary and secondary school can be as long as from 7 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. and for 6 days of a 7-day week. And that helped me understand just how rigorous academia is in Yogyakarta and how it must look from their perspective and how justified it is for him to say that we are much more laid back in Australia. Another key insight I gained was also through a lecture where I got to have a little debate with Ranga and through also my own observations of Indonesia and previous knowledge. Um, Ranga studied political philosophy, so we got to talk a little bit about how secular and atheist views are not politically voiced or represented, and how census data will show everyone as religious, even those who may not practice those religions. And I thought that was quite interesting um, because in Australia, obviously, we're quite a secular country and we're quite used to religion not affecting our policy as much, but in Indonesia, that's very different. So, in preparing for the final presentation, our group's process was that we held group meetings to delegate research in sections of the presentation. But unlike some other groups, we actually had two people per section so that we always had somebody to go to for advice and guidance. We would then reconvene each night and provide feedback on each other's sections based on the rubric. And at the end, we would practice for cohesion and time together. My role involved conducting extra research on the PLN and electricity laws. Due to my law background, I was providing some academic sources for the SDGs, and my section with my groupmate Bridget was the reflection stage of the reframe and reflect process. I was also in charge of some of the formatting of the assignment and the submission of the assignment. Some of the challenges we faced involved settling on a problem that everyone was happy with. We realized kind of late that we had limited ourselves by only focusing on the output of renewable energy, and we kind of had to confront one of our cultural biases because we had measured Indonesia's energy success through post development and evidence of infrastructure, and we had made assumptions about the production of energy systems by comparing them to Australia's. Assuming that the landscape wasn't diverse at all, and assuming natural resources were consistent. So that was a big challenge we had to get over and kind of reframe our challenge to better reflect Indonesia's diverse landscapes. And the way that interdisciplinarity shaped our work is we had two students from engineering backgrounds that shone a light on the practical application and kinds of processes that go into renewable energy. Education reminded us of the importance of youth and teaching communities how to adapt. Our group member from economics did an analysis of the state's monopoly in the electricity sector and identified that international and global players don't actually play a role because the laws don't actually allow them to invest. And my law background helped me research Indonesia's electricity law and the de facto vertical monopoly imposed by the PLN. So I was very intertwined with my economics group member to discover stakeholders. Science gave us some insight into how biomass energy actually works and what net zero emissions means. And through all of these insights, we were able to break the frame because they were introducing new variables each time. And so one key insight that I stumbled across in week two was through Dr. Setiowan's local insight session 6, which was about the case of Godongorong. And he said something really important, which was that electrified can mean at the very least that there will be light, but it does not mean that there is sufficient energy to turn on the aircon, to use a fridge, to do the laundry, or to charge a phone. So electrified could mean 500 watts or more, which is not that much. And SDGs such as Goal 7 regarding access to electricity don't provide a threshold. And so even those who can be said to have universal access to electricity, what it's kind of overlooking there is insufficiency. And I thought this was really important because it reminds us that international and mostly Western standards are flawed and don't always reflect reality. And so when we impose these standards onto countries like Indonesia, we should be careful. And a second insight was through Dr. Priyetno's local insight session 7, which was to do with energy security. And he said that natural gas will be used to phase out coal in Indonesia, and then that renewable energy would be used to phase out natural gas. So he said that natural gas is used to accommodate when renewable energy sources can't generate energy, where there's a lack of wind, for example, or a lack of sunlight in Indonesia. Natural gas has a smaller carbon footprint than coal. But that really just, to me, was important because it shows the complex process of actually applying renewable energy infrastructure in Indonesia, and helped our group really focus not on the output, but rather how it is developed and what are some of the challenges that come from the complexities of this.